Well. Would you looky here? The cat has dragged in something incredibly unfortunate, depending on who you are and who is listening. Welcome to those that are listening. And if you're already confused by there being a different voice, it is because this is not the venerable Blaine Henry, our normal host of this podcast. Blaine is attending to family matters tonight with the full and loving support of my man Drake and I, and we had no problem stepping up and tag teaming it, especially when, my friend, we don't have to talk about hypothetical things on this podcast anymore. We're actually less than 48 hours out from the beginning of a renaissance, man. Sports, little by little, are going to be back, and Dana White, of course, first to the party. However, let's just get the first things first. This man, Drake Riggs, is sitting there looking all combed up and fresh, ready to go. He is my partner in crime and 1/3 of the collective that makes up the Open Mat Round Table. Drake, how you doing, my man?
Not too bad. Still holding my breath a little bit. I just don't want to get completely excited. I'm pretty excited now. I'm at like 70%, but I'm still
after they weigh in tomorrow. I mean, what other reservations could you have?
Somebody gets a virus, right? I mean,
do I say hit the brakes and let's talk about that, or do we just keep going and move on and not talk about virus stuff? Because that's a fascinating scenario. Like, what if all of a sudden you see breaking news: Justin Gaethje tested positive for COVID?
Exactly.
No, actually, what's going to happen is this is all going to go down and go all good and well. The next few months of the UFC calendar are going to go on as planned. They're going to make Tony Khabib for a 5th time. There's going to be no confirmed COVID cases in the United States. 6th time. And then when they make the fight for November, 1 week out, all of a sudden the first case of COVID-19 repopping up is either Tony or Khabib. And then boom goes the dynamite for the 6th time. One of those two guys, that's my prediction, will test positive for the resurgence of the virus later this year, and that will be what dooms it for a 6th time. A 6th time. But we're going to get into the ins and outs of UFC 249. This man and I, as well as I would imagine many, many fans of sanctioned violence all around the world, are beyond giddy and excited to be just under 48 hours out from an actual fight card. Fans being there or not, or whatever may have you, I'm just ready to see some actual in-cage fighting, some actual live sporting events. If I had to see computer NASCAR on SportsCenter one more time, I was going to jump off my roof. Like,
I still can't believe that was a thing.
Right, man? I mean, people are just looking for any way they possibly can to keep people entertained in the sports world.
That's the same thing as like esports, I guess, but still.
This man Dana said screw that, though.
Drivers, right? Yeah.
This man Dana said screw that, though. We're putting plans in motion. Island, yep, buy that. Let's go. This man's been making moves, and it's paid off. Let me start by asking you the same question that I asked my guest earlier today when I had on my podcast. Does the fact that we're going to come to the finish line here and finally get what we've been waiting for in the form of fights in and of themselves, does it dampen it at all to you that it's not going to be Khabib and Tony staring across each other at the end of the card? Or, the card is so stacked, like there's a lot of big names, 2 title fights. Does it not really matter to you at this point?
Oh, yeah. I still wish that we were getting Khabib and Tony because, I mean, it's such... I don't know how unnecessary of a risk it is now at this point, but I mean, initially it was like, man, Tony, why, man? Why you don't have to fight for all the leverage feels on him, you need both of these guys to make this fight. And this is there's a very real possibility he loses this and just, ruins the whole thing for good. The real final nail. You can try and remake it all you want. Just keep hammering it in slowly as the fight gets canceled each time. But if he loses, then, who knows how long, if ever, that it's going to take for him to get back to, being in this spot. And the fact that it's for an interim, which doesn't mean anything really, obviously, especially for him.
The I word.
The I word.
The godforsaken I word has returned.
Yeah. But I mean, if you take away this fight, obviously an amazing fight. It's always an amazing fight with either of these guys, no matter who they're against. But you take this fight off, Gaethje and Ferguson, that is, this is still the best card of the year. It's completely stacked,
Wow.
Easy. So, I mean, well, you think it's a big difference without it?
Dude, I mean, you see, you're hearing the commercial. Let's get one thing very straight, very narrow, very quickly. This card is ridiculous. It's insanely stacked. But again, I hate to touch back on what was said on my podcast earlier, but my guest said it's the second most stacked card of all time behind UFC 200. And I was like,
I'd have to look at that.
Hold on a second. Are we willing to go that far? They're saying in commercials it's the most stacked card, and I know it's like you're basically paid and told to say this, but they're saying in commercials it's the most stacked card of all time. I'm not going that far. I'm really not. How can you say this is the most stacked card of all time when there's only one undisputed belt on the line and we've seen 3 change hands in a night before? I think that's ludicrous. Could it end up being the best card of the year on paper? Sure. But second best card of all time, you're dreaming.
Yeah, that's just kind of selling it a bit, obviously. I mean, if you think about like 200, for example, I mean, that card, the very first fight of that event was Gomi and Jim Miller, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. It was
Gomi and Jim Miller. Was Diego Sanchez and Joe Lozon right after that?
Right after that. And then third fight was Thiago Santos and Gegard Mousasi. That was the third fight.
On the
Think
card.
about that. On the entire thing, overall. The third fight here, what is Price and Luque 2, great fight. But man, there's levels to the calibers here, right?
But is it just me, or does the main event being Tate versus Nunes draw the card to a sound that kind of sounds like the cartoon?
I think Hunt versus Lesnar does more, honestly.
Really?
In my opinion, that's just a freak show. That's what that was. Obviously, you can't change my mind about it.
They shot that dude up with Gorilla Tranquilizer and sent him out there for a poor Samoan man.
Such a desperation move, and for not even a good fight. It was, just so unfortunate.
And the fight didn't end up being competitive either.
Yeah, and that card too didn't live up to the hype, unfortunately. But on paper, going into it, it was like, oh my goodness. And I mean, even looking back on it on paper was ridiculous. I mean, I think that after Mousasi and Santos was like, I think it was Kelvin and Johnny Hendricks. Like, it was just ridiculous. If you go and look at that one, this one very good, best ever. I don't know about that. I mean, even
it could very well end up being the best card of the year. I say that, actually, I'm going to go ahead and pump the brakes, walk it back, take the cart back to the dock. Go ahead and take it back, bring the receipt, go to customer service. What have I been saying? What have we all been collectively agreeing on the rendition of this podcast recently? These fights that have been dropping off and these fights that have been canceled because of all this, they got to go somewhere.
Exactly.
Woodley and Edwards, obviously you're going to get Woodley and Burns, but main events that were originally scheduled for Lincoln, Nebraska. You got to imagine the Kazakhstan main event, Marais and Yan. Where's that going to go? Just plug and chug Burns in the place of Leon Edwards. We all knew Woodley and Edwards was going to have to go somewhere. Where is Till and Whitaker going to go? By that kind of domino effect happening, we're going to get some stacked cards later this year.
And also, I think that, with the kind of break between everything, right, the gaps and all that, and everybody missing the fight so much more, it's going to kind of give people over-exaggerations, if you know what I mean. Like, they'll think things are better than they maybe are just because we haven't seen them in a while. Because, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? So, things, even if they're really good, they
Where'd you hear that saying, bro?
Blown out of proportion. What? That's a common phrase, isn't it?
I must say, if it is a common phrase, I've never heard that, or need to pick up a book called Common Phrases You've Never Heard.
Common Phrases for Dummies.
In parentheses, an oxymoron in a book title.
Yeah. I've heard that since middle school, man.
Really?
But yeah, so I think there will be that kind of effect on this card, even if it's like, if we only get a couple here and there, we'll see what happens. But I think we'll see some of that. But
without a doubt, these guys can't just get paid by magically saying they want to fight or trying to lobby for a fight. And here's another thing that I was thinking about too that none of us brought up as far as the domino effect for this whole virus kind of situation that's going on. What's going to happen when they pick up the phone and try to fill slots on cards and people are saying no? Guess what happens? People's dreams are about to come true, my man. People's Octagon debuts are about to come to fruition. Octagon jitters are getting ready to be had. I'm telling you, we might see an unreal number of UFC debuts. Now, dangerous kind of to take your UFC debut at the circuit, unless your particular situation within your gym and your training partners is all good, and for some reason you live in antivirus happy always land and everything's fine, then that more power to you. However, you'd have to imagine a lot of guys are going to be like, man, I want to fight, but I don't want to fight such and such. Not on a full camp. We've already seen Michael Chiesa come out and saying he only wants to fight somebody ranked higher than him, but won't do it unless he's on a full camp. And that actually brings us to a topic you and I wanted to touch on briefly before we get into this card. The baddest man on the planet is kind of in that boat. Little bit of an extenuating circumstance, though, being that this man, Stipe Miocic, does the great honor and service of filling out a first responder duty every single day and most of the time whenever he's not training. He says he hasn't trained in a while. DC is sitting there saying, well, what's going on? You texted me and said that there was a possibility that the word strip could come into effect. Do you think it goes to that length with Stipe Miocic?
Man, I really hope not. And I think that a lot of people do, because that's just absolutely insane. But Dana literally said, when asked that, it's a possibility. Like, man, come on. We know you love interims. Just do that again.
Like, he loves them.
Yeah,
God. He gets so excited anytime the word interim is thrown around.
I don't see the point of stripping Stipe potentially. Well, okay, obviously there's no point to it whatsoever, right? Let's get that out of the way. I don't see the point on top of that to do it when DC's only going to fight him, right? He's not going to fight somebody else for an undisputed title. I mean, sure, that's nice.
He's going to fight him, hop in the horse buggy, ride off into the sunset, whether he wins, loses, or fights to a draw. Yeah,
that's his last fight. That guy specifically wants to get that one back. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to make that one? So there's no point in doing that. If you're going to do something, do an interim, even though that's unnecessary. You know, it's just a ridiculous situation. But I don't know. What do you think about that, man? Probably similar thoughts.
Oh, I just cringed at the thought of myself getting ready to give this response. However, it's the first thing that popped in my head. You've heard me speak. You've seen my tweets. I'm very much so, when it comes to sports, MMA, all sports alike, what is going on inside the actual event, let alone, sure, what happens behind the scenes and the kind of chronological timeline that leads up to a sporting event taking place is important. However, obviously, it's much more important to put up and or shut up whenever it comes to that time. What I'm trying to say is the first thought that popped in my head was Twitter and how if Stipe Miocic does get stripped, dog, do you know how offended and hurt and wanting to make it all about them Twitter is going to get? MMA Twitter specifically. He's a first responder. Well, obviously understandable, but like, why are you stripping him when he's just helping people? Like, I read those tweets in that voice. Those are going to come in a rapid fire type of style. And obviously, you know, if there's one person I could count on to never give a single damn about anything anyone says that's not he or the matchmakers, it's Dana White. But, dude, you got to imagine the PR side of that is not a good one. Not a good one. How can you justify stripping somebody for doing their duty or at least kind of doing exactly what they were hired to do, paid to do, and what they were sworn in to do? And a lot of people aren't fighting right now because of those circumstances we laid out earlier. How are you going to strip the heavyweight champion of the world for doing his job outside of what is basically a side gig? They're independent contractors, aren't they? Tell me I'm wrong.
Allegedly.
According to Dana.
Apparently. Yeah, it's weird, man. And I mean, it makes me think kind of like of Nunes, where she's all right, getting a pass. I guess that I mean, Stipe had the eye injury he was recovering from, but it sounds like he's okay now. It's just the fact that he can't train. Gym's not open, and he has this, other job to work with, which where you would think, well, okay, it's ridiculous in both situations if you're going to talk about stripping Nunes or Stipe.
That was pre-Cyborg Nunes, though. Those conversations died and went straight to hell.
But I mean, with the
Cyborg fight was over.
Yeah, true. But, if there was a case to do it with anybody, even though there's not, if you're going to do it with somebody, I guess, Cyborg makes more sense, especially because she has two of them. So, hey.
And I mean, the way it went down, like you had the feeling like afterwards when that fight was over that Amanda Nunes' kind of perception from UFC brass, fans, even though I'm not saying she's all of a sudden the Conor McGregor of female MMA at this point in terms of popularity, I think that it was definitely a significant turning point after she did what she did to Cyborg from the perception of the people in higher up seats, the fans, because she left just about damn near no doubt with the way she won. But we're kind of getting off topic a little bit. The topic at hand, while we will touch on a couple of others, news and note-wise later on. Oh, boy. We got two wild men getting ready to scrap for the I word on Saturday. Tony Ferguson looking to become, I don't know if this is a good thing, first ever UFC two-time interim champion. Something tells me that they're going to try to put that belt around him or give it to him, and he's just going to shoo it off if he were to win.
Is this the first? This is the first interim belt of the new belt era, right? So would this be one of the new fancy belts?
No, Gastelum and Adesanya.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep. Okay. All right.
Ding, ding, ding.
There's too many to keep track of.
I mean, dude, like 2018 and 2017, yeah, there were a ton, but 2017 was year of MMA gods being in a bad mood for 365 days straight. Like, do you remember International Fight Week? It had like 7 main events in 48 hours.
It was brutal, yeah.
And ended up with Nunes and Shevchenko too, and then that got canceled.
Day before.
Right. Didn't Johnson and Borg get that was like 2 months later, but still point continuing to be made.
Yep.
Regardless though, boy, even if I get it, like the masses are going to be disappointed that Tony isn't going to be standing in the blue corner across from said champion, fresh off taking off the, how do you pronounce it? Papavka? I never remember the name of the hat, the big puffy hat.
Yeah, the Papavka. I think it's Papaka, something like that.
something with P's and K's. And the fact that those two are not going to tangle, obviously, is a bummer. But, I mean, hey, it could be UFC 223, right? When we were originally supposed to get Ferguson and Khabib, and everything's fine all the way leading up into a week of, everybody that's probably listening knows the story, and you end up with a main event of Khabib and Al Iaquinta. That's not the case here. Yeah, there are no fans in the stands to react to what a Zabit versus Kyle Bochniak style war would bring us on Saturday. But, I mean, you want to talk about stylistically and from a matchup perspective as juicy of a tango that you're going to get in this sport. It's these two wild men right here. And what jumps out to me right away is that 6.5 reach advantage that Tony's going to have. And I think he's going to intend to use it.
That would be a wise move. You don't want to let Gaethje get too close in that pocket and start firing away. But, hey, he'll throw the legs happily. He'll throw the legs with content.
Yeah, and Blaine, I think, brought up a really, really good point of conversation about Gaethje in his last fight, whether that comes from the somewhat borderline weird obsession of watching just a Gaethje fight that he displayed. Love you, Blaine. Sorry, I had to throw that at you. But, hey, I mean, I don't have a favorite fighter, but Gaethje's my favorite guy to watch. I mean, Gaethje's the guy that you call off work to watch fight. Gaethje is the guy that you tell your mom and grandma you can't come to dinner to watch fight. Like, you come up with every possible excuse in the book just to sit down and watch this guy take place in sanctioned violence. But I want to bring up or re-bring up a question we asked last week to you to see if your answers changed at all or if you've had any changing of your mind on this particular subject. Justin Gaethje, before Barboza, probably maybe even before Vic, I don't think that fight unfolded for long enough for us to really be able to tell. But Blaine hit it on the nail when he said Gaethje has begun to fight much smarter, like a technical brawler per se. I hate that like moniker that we put on people sometimes. However, he fits that bill just about as well as anybody. Who is going to bring the fight to who? Who's going to step forward? Who is going to walk the other guy down? Because both guys have been known to do it, but both guys are more than comfortable in sitting back and firing away.
Hey, they're going to meet in the middle, right? Just going to go right at each other now. I think that it's most realistic. I think that we'll see Tony working, walking backwards. I could see, man, Gaethje he never takes a step backward. I mean, I'd have to examine those last 3 fights a lot closer, but it's not like he needed to in those ones that I can remember. Right. So Tony, he's pretty comfortable everywhere too, and can hurt you from any spot wherever the fight is going. I mean, gosh, you just see he's like a surgeon in there, literally, with how he's cutting people up. It's kind of incredible. Just the before and afters of every opponent that he goes against. And Gaethje wants his nose to be broken. That's a funny quote from the week. So
that's one of those "why do I cover this sport" quotes.
Yeah.
You see quotes sometimes like Bryce Mitchell, for example, tweeting back at Charles Rosa, "I almost ripped my nuts off. You think I'm worried about a limb?" I see that and I'm just like, why do I cover this sport? But it's part of what makes it so poetic once the words begin to turn into actions. And I mean, what good could come from Tony breaking Justin Gaethje's nose? You don't think he's serious, do you?
He's pretty crazy, man. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I swear, I need to
Think
chill.
about it. I
need to remember who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you got 2 psychopaths in here.
You're already a psychopath if you come off a win. What was the fight when he came on the mic afterwards and said, "Where is my equal?" He didn't even respond to any question the guy asked. He's like, "Where is my equal?" I think it was Barboza.
I don't know. That might have been the Michael Johnson one, right when he got in there.
Oh, maybe.
Because when he was still undefeated.
Yeah, but then
it was that one.
Then he got the tagline of the most violent. And Eddie Alvarez kind of came in and stole that for a day. But Eddie Alvarez displayed some beautiful violence to the tune of an Ed and Eddie sized jawbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
He's not the most violent. Justin Gaethje is the most violent, right?
Gaethje. Okay, let's see. I've said this many times, and I firmly believe it, but I think Gaethje is the most exciting fighter of all time, man. I mean, never, ever a bad fight. And I mean, you'd have to try and find one. I've never seen one. I don't think it's possible. This guy, every single fight is almost a fight of the year candidate or a must see, like that kind of craziness every single time out.
If there's a bad Gaethje fight, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's just not a thing. As for most violent, though, I mean, it goes hand in hand, right? Obviously. It depends on your kind of violence that you're thinking of, like blood, because then that could be Ferguson. We're saying how he cuts people. If you're looking at knockouts, Ngannou knockouts are very violent, and he's on this card as well. I mean, they're all in this category, but
hell, Nico Price is sitting in the back of the room like, "What about me?"
Yeah, that's a great choice as well.
I finish people with my hands while I'm on my back.
Yeah, exactly. And I always personally love me some good ground and pound. So Curtis Blades is a very violent fighter in my books. Right. So yeah, I'd have to really think about who I think is the most violent ever. But yeah, I don't know. Even Shogun in Pride, you got to look at rule sets too.
Oh my god,
really
Prime Shogun in Pride.
Pretty nasty.
I'm crying to my mommy if I'm standing across the ring, dude. What?
So
seeing that dude stare at you, or I mean, Vanderlei kind of, but I would have been more scared of Shogun.
Yeah,
Regardless, though, to kind
Even
of stay.
Fedor.
Yeah, but like Fedor wouldn't scare me. He'd more just like disturb the hell out of me. Like it's just like, why does this guy not move his face?
That's kind of worse. That's kind of worse, man.
Like, why does this guy everywhere I go, press, media, face-offs? Now we're in the ring. Now he's coming towards me, and his face has looked the same the whole time.
Every time I've seen him,
the whole time.
Does he blink? I don't know.
I don't think he ever has blinked. I think that's a known fact, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually just texted me and told me he's never blinked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for watching, Fedor.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Emelianenko. We appreciate it. What are the keys to this fight, man? Like, for Gaethje, it's just like where his bread and butter lies in all his other fights, and just as much so as he speaks into existence with his leg kicks. You know, he calls himself the most vicious, violent leg kicker in the lightweight division, if not all in MMA. But that 76.5-inch reach is going to be tricky to navigate as far as just distance is concerned, let alone trying to kick his legs. You see right from underneath, that leg reach, just about a half-inch longer. Tony Ferguson, and something else we said on Open Mat as well last week, it's going to be really interesting to see where the recent strengths of schedules form and mesh these guys into what type of product they bring into the octagon, because we both agreed 12 wins in a row. I mean, kind of impressive. Let's not lie, though. Gaethje's strength of schedule clearly is stronger. Gaethje, just from his sample size of guys he's fought in comparison to, let's just say, the 12 in a row Tony's beat. And yeah, there have been guys that have pulled out. And yeah, there have been times where Khabib is supposed to be there and he wasn't. Justin Gaethje's strength of schedule is better, right?
I mean, in a condensed schedule, yeah. I mean, if you compare it that way, but I mean,
to the 12.
To the 12.
How many fights does he have? 7, 6?
Gaethje, yeah, it is a lot closer than I guess I realized.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, 6. Saturday would be 7.
So half. He's got half, and then you look at who the guys were. I mean, yeah, pretty crazy. Obviously, didn't win them, but they were really tough guys that Ferguson has not fought. Yeah, man. As for the keys, though, the difference makers of sorts, you know, there's always that wrestling in Gaethje's back pocket. I don't know if he'll need it here once again. He doesn't usually, you know, look for the takedowns. If it goes there, I think it would be from Ferguson going for something crazy like a, you know, rolling knee bar, or, you know, something wild. He could do it. Who knows? Look for a Darce and pull Gaethje down, and then they're on the ground for a little bit there. Right. Leg kicks, I think, will obviously be a big factor, probably for both guys. I could see Ferguson attacking back just as violently because he's like, all right, you want to throw leg kicks? You know, some just ridiculousness like that.
Some Tony shit.
Tony shit.
I'm Tony Ferguson. You want to do MMA stuff? I can do MMA stuff.
Yeah.
Can you push tires? Can you run up and down hills faster than everybody else?
Yeah. But I think that honestly, the biggest difference maker of sorts in this fight will be the durability. That sounds wrong to say, but you know, we've seen Gaethje in more like slugfest wars, right? Like just rock'em sock'em fights. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever been in more than him, because that's just how he, you know, his career has gone up until the losses, and you know, he's really cleaned things up since then. But if he's to get into that situation again, we've seen Tony hurt and dropped. He gets hit a lot. Not to say Gaethje hasn't been hit a lot before in the past, but he's been able to absorb it, I think, you know, a little bit better, which sounds weird to say that, even though we've seen him be finished, you know, but it's taken a lot for him to get to that finishing point, that breaking point, right? We've seen Ferguson, he got dropped by, you know, Anthony Pettis, who, you know, Gaethje hits harder than him. I think that's safe to say. Obviously, Pettis has knockout ability in his fists as well, but I don't know, man.
Pettis didn't even score the best knockdown of Tony Ferguson. A man that goes by Groovy did once upon a time.
That is true. That is very true. Twice, didn't he? No, there was multiple
times.
Well,
he sent him down. He was set on his way to sending him down, and then landed a picture-perfect kick to the side of the noggin while he was on his way down. Kind of apropos, like Rosenstruik when he finished Junior Albini. Remember when he set him down and then just like capitalized with a head kick while he was going to the ground?
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite fights. Forget about that one. That was just crazy, short notice stuff there. But
Ferguson and Lando.
yeah, man.
I think this fight has a lot of Ferguson and Lando potentially written all over it, man.
Yeah.
But weirdly enough, when I think of and try to visualize the finishing sequence of this fight, I continuously arrive upon two conclusions. Tony by sub or Gaethje by out cold vicious knockout. Yeah. I could, if we're going to talk about a prediction, my prediction probably at the end of the day, without setting it in stone, is Tony by submission. In like a Darce. Like the Darce was, like you said, was the one that came to mind for me. On the other hand, though, I could 100,000% see Gaethje catching Ferguson and putting him to sleep. Yeah, I really could.
Yeah, that's my prediction, honestly. I mean...
That's your prediction?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe second round. I think that it's definitely going to make it out of the first round. I have a hard time imagining it going full 5. Maybe we get to the 5, but I don't know. Decision, I have trouble seeing that. And if it goes that, to the 5th, that area of the fight, obviously you got to favor Tony in that case, by whatever kind of finish. And, there's that possibility, you mentioned it before, Ferguson could win via cut, you could get a doctor stoppage, something crazy like that, which would be kind of just typical of the situation in the fight, right? So, yeah, man, there's multiple ways that this can end, obviously, but I think Gaethje's most likely, way to win is obviously by an earlier knockout within those first 3. That seems like the only real way we can see him winning, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's going to pick him to win a decision or,
no.
A submission. That's not going to happen. They're expecting a knockout from him if they're picking him to win. So,
yeah, and something that's really kind of come out of, I wouldn't say the woodworks. We've all known that Gaethje's had power ever since World Series of Fighting. Gaethje, I hate to go back once again to what Blaine said, and I also hate to shower our friend Blaine with constant praise and recognition for points that I feel were spot on. But clearly the guy likes Justin Gaethje because everything he was saying was spot on about how Gaethje's approach now, all of a sudden, in comparison from Michael Johnson, where he literally just walked right at him, gave him damn near no respect, stood in the pocket, took every shot. You didn't see that in the Barbosa fight. Don't feel like we were going to see it in the Vic fight for however much longer that was going to go. And you definitely didn't see it in the Cowboy fight. This is it's so hard to characterize it. I don't want to say reborn. I don't want to say revitalized because Gaethje has been capable of this for a while.
He just chose not to. Right?
Yes, kind of like his wrestling. Dude was an All-American at Northern Colorado. Man's just like, nah, screw that. Nah, screw that. Leg kicks and punchy face. That's what I do.
Maybe this will be the one. Maybe this will be the one where he's like, you know what? Sorry, guys. There's gold on the line.
People have been saying the same thing about Yoel Romero since about 1950.
Oh, come on. Yoel hasn't used his wrestling since the first Whitaker fight.
That's what I'm saying though. Like people have been saying, like, is this Israel? Perfect example. Is this the fight, dude? It's totally the fight where he's gonna come in and wrestle. And I've always sat there with the Shannon Sharp. This man see you soon, boy. He see you soon, boy. He's not double legging. He's not clinching. He'll crash in and try to strike at short distance, but that man ain't going to grapple. And I feel the same way with Justin Gaethje. I think that ship's as close to sailing as it possibly could.
Do you think, this is completely just a random, hypothetical, but do you think that Gaethje would attempt to wrestle with Khabib, like engage first? Hypothetically, obviously.
Dude, weird. Telekinesis, telepathy.
Were you thinking
was thinking not exactly that, but something along the lines of that. You got to be on some serious Class A controlled substances all at once. If you look at Khabib Nurmagomedov and go, yeah, that guy, I'm going to try to wrestle him.
That's, yeah.
What's that, Coach Whitman? What, Bears? Oh, okay. That's how that would go. We got a question from my man Ryan Leslie. Would you argue Gaethje has the best chance within the first 2 rounds and Ferguson has the latter? You know, conventional wisdom would lead you to believe that, because if there's someone in MMA with a more ready to go at all times, however many rounds type of game cardio, show me a guy that's more that than Tony Ferguson. I would imagine he's invisible or in a UFC video game career mode, because that guy doesn't exist, in my opinion. So conventional wisdom would lead one to believe that the longer the fight goes on, while it doesn't necessarily, I think, hinder Gaethje, I mean, I don't see how it couldn't play to Tony's benefit, because that guy could go 15 rounds.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I mean, the thing that we've kind of talked about, you know, in the lead up to this with Blaine and everything is, has Gaethje's cardio improved? You know, you can assume so, but we haven't seen it yet because he hasn't needed to show it off yet.
I was about to say, I can't assume so. I can't assume so because there's no history or proof there for me to assume it off of.
Yeah.
And this guy's just finishing dudes quickly.
I mean, you can make this, you know, this theory here, present this for people, but, you know, in his first stretch of fights, right before he took the first loss, you know, we saw his gas tank wasn't very great. You know, he was fading a bit, and as the end was coming near and all that. But you could argue maybe that was because of how just all out that he was going. And quit zooming. This man here.
I'm having way too much fun with this.
But I think there's an argument there to be made that maybe he gassed out or, you know, got more tired in those earlier fights because of how much energy he was expending. And if he is to, you know, restrain himself a bit more like we've been seeing on this 3-fight winning streak, then, you know, hey, maybe his cardio has always been good traditionally if he's not fighting like a, you know, psycho, you know, if he's not just throwing all his energy at every opportunity that he can, which that makes sense, right? Obviously his cardio will be a little bit better if he doesn't do that. So I think there is reason to believe that he can hang into, let's say, like the 4th round. I don't want to say the 5th round because that's, you know, the end. But at the same time, we haven't seen it. So,
yeah, and like I said, I can't really base a preconceived belief off of something I have not seen or have no physical evidence to go off of. You know, I'm trying to remember because, I mean, I would imagine Blaine can relate. I've seen all of Gaethje's World Series of Fighting bouts. Now, have I seen them 35 times in a row on repeat like Blaine? But
I would love to.
The last time, good Lord, that will throw you for a curve. The last time Justin Gaethje needed to be read a judge's scorecard in a mixed martial arts bout was against Melvin Gillard, of all people.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a split.
Yeah, that was actually fairly competitive.
That fight being anywhere close to competitive in 2020 is just dreamland. Yeah. I mean, I see that and I'm just like, oh my gosh, how did that actually happen? How did Melvin Gillard last, I would assume 25 minminutes, right? This is 6 years ago, though.
Gillard,
no, it was a catch weight, 3 5-minute rounds.
He might have also been on PEDs in that one. Missed weight and PEDs, I think. Well, obviously the missed weight, but
he in his corner smelling like a blunt too.
Something. So,
regardless, are you leaning more toward? We'll try to move on to maybe not bigger and better things, certainly smaller in a literal sense, but better considering which guy on this panel whose name rhymes with Blake Bliggs that you ask, because I know what fight he
most
could potentially be looking forward to. But what's your pick, or at least your lean right now? I haven't put in my picks on Tapology or really done any set in stone type of predictions yet. I'm thinking it's going to be Ferguson by sub, but like I said, if Gaethje just knocks him out cold or and violently and stunningly, I wouldn't be surprised. But my pick is Ferguson by sub.
Yeah, I've always thought that Gaethje, well, I mean, ever since I've imagined this matchup, being more possible and getting closer, I just feel like he's a bad stylistic matchup enough to where it's hard for me to see Tony winning, which sounds absolutely insane. I agree that it sounds insane of me to say that, but yeah, man, I got Gaethje. I think knockout in the first or second, but for an official pick, I'll go second to be safe there. So
staring at my notes, dude. You looking off my paper, bro?
No.
You trying to take my swag, dude? Because that's my pick, bro. You got to give it back. I don't share. Second round sub is my pick, though, and great minds think alike, especially here on Open Mat Episode 6, part of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. Here we go. Believe it or not, that man standing there on the right is about to be fighting in yet another UFC title fight. Think without thinking about it off the top of your head, how many title fights in the UFC has he been a part of? Quickly, 5 seconds.
6.
I'm going to fact check
5.
that. I'm going to fact check that momentarily and let you know if you're correct. However, believe it or not, the man I am speaking to over the airwaves of StreamYard, Twitter, my Facebook, has a T-shirt with the man pictured on your right's face on it, body on it.
Should have worn it today, but I didn't want to jinx anything.
However, the picture of him holding up that beautiful old gold strap on that ill-fated night in Chicago, Illinois, where Dominic Cruz.
Boston. It was Boston.
Oh yeah, what fight was in Chicago? Oh, I'm thinking of TJ and Barao. That was in Chicago.
Yeah,
and that was on Fox. That one was on Fox too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, stupid brain. But
Boston, come on, you got your Boston shirt on, man. Come
Boston.
on.
Yeah, I was about to say, dude, I'm repping the boys out here, and I can't even get Dominic Cruz's last claim to fame, and fame being the way of the UFC bantamweight title. And Drake, you and I have already been over this. We went over this earlier today on my airwaves, and the answer seems to be pretty synonymous. It's going to be pretty dang difficult to keep Dominic Cruz out of the rarefied air of being the greatest bantamweight in the history of the sport. If he can not only become now the 3-time bantamweight champion, but also, night full of firsts. Tony Ferguson, if he potentially becomes the first guy to kind of unceremoniously be a 2-time interim champion, we could be looking at that happening on the same night where Dominic Cruz potentially becomes the first guy to win and recapture UFC gold off 3-year layoffs on 2 separate occasions. Would be insane. The floor is yours, my friend. Go ahead and take it away.
Mind-boggling. I mean, I don't have... I've always said all I can say about this. It's already what he's done has been miraculous, and I think already the greatest comeback. He has the greatest comeback in sporting history. This just absolutely cements it. I mean, look at him. We're getting the nice zoom here. Man, if anybody's gonna do it, it's obviously this guy. But even stylistically, this fight is probably. Obviously it's a tough one. Henry Cejudo, nobody likes to give him, the kind of praise that he deserves because I think of the personality and persona he's put it on since he's become champion with the Triple C and all the king of the cringe stuff. But man, Henry Cejudo is absolutely phenomenal. You got to give him the respect that he deserves. I mean, that Marlon Moraes performance was, that's a championship performance, right?
Surgical. Yes, absolutely. I was there. And right when that fight was over, I picked Marlon, and I wasn't convinced, much like many others weren't convinced even after the DJ fight. Some people's initial pushback would be, how can you not be convinced after you take out the longest reigning UFC champion of all time? Well, bro, a lot of people don't believe he actually did. That fight is the closest thing, even having watched that fight 2-3 times back, that's the closest thing to me putting my hands up and being like, dude, you really could give multiple of the 5 rounds to either guy. It was such a close fight, and I didn't mind who ended up getting their hand raised one way or another. However, all of that being said, when Cejudo surgically brought himself back together, took round 1 on the chin, because he took round 1 on the chin metaphorically and took many on the chin literally, as well as to his own legs in round 1, and then said, oh, I can kick legs too, and just started thack, 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 and really started taking Marlon's kind of the wind kind of out of his sails. I couldn't agree with you more. I think, you got the feeling after that fight was over, even if it would have gone all 5 rounds, finish or not, that dude's got what it takes to defend that title a time or two, if not more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But the interesting thing, I kind of want to talk about the Demetrius fight a little bit, just because I saw, the tweet from you the other night, because I was thinking about that fight, and I was like, I got to see what my second view was, because at the first initial view of the second Mighty Mouse fight, I thought Henry won it 48-47. I think it was like the last 3 rounds. But then the second watch, I think I had it 49-46 for Demetrius, like very close, and that's a big flip. But very big flip. Yeah, especially just looking at it on paper. But again, very close fight, of course, but not very definitive in a lot of people's minds, which is what it is. But as for this matchup, incredibly interesting. I think it's probably the best time for them to meet stylistically. I mean, obviously, Dominic, you would like to see him come back and fight, earlier. You don't want to
probably not the best time for them to meet like normally, right? Like say hi, say what's up, give each other a handshake.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not a good time for that.
Under kinder situation. But Dominic used to fighting, smaller opponents. I mean, not to say that he's only been beating up flyweights and all that, because that can be used as criticism and everything. But Henry, I'm trying to think of, Marlon's probably the biggest guy that he's fought, right? I mean, Marlon's a very big bantamweight and a very, sturdy.
Did Henry not fight Luis Smolka at one point?
I mean, no, he didn't. I don't think he did. But Smolka's still not bigger than Moraes.
Really? Dude, Smolka's a smooth like 5'10", 5'11".
But mass-wise?
No.
Moraes is a big dude.
Yeah.
And California recommended he goes up to,
145.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with a big opponent who moves the way that Dominic Cruz does. I mean, that's obviously in itself, a big deal for anybody. An interesting note to point out here, I don't know if you follow too much of our buddy John Yunko's Twitter and his tweets and all that. Our buddy,
love that guy.
He dropped some rumblings that he's been hearing that Dominic is gonna come in with a completely different style, which that's what he's hearing, but I find that super hard to imagine, just considering, he's taken all this time to hone and craft what he does best. That would make it even more incredible if he did that and then won. Like, what is he doing? He's flat-footed and he just knocked out Henry with an uppercut, like something ridiculous, But I guess that's something to think about. John does talk to a lot of people. Maybe he does know something. We'll find out. But I still think that Dominic's traditional style that he's been using his whole career is the best path to victory. I mean,
you would have to imagine. And let's make one thing very clear. There is an extremely high likelihood, I'd even go as far as saying that John, our good buddy John, whether he knows it or not, friend of the program, John Yonko, the likelihood of him hearing whispers from, whether it is from or inside or from people kind of on the cusp that are generally observing Cruz's camp, chances of that, very realistic. When it comes to Dominic changing up his approach inside the octagon, though, that's I don't care who you are or what you say or what you heard. I got to see it with my own 2 eyes, just like kind of like how you said, before I actually believe it,
Yeah.
It's kind of like when Michael Jackson died, even though the news was all saying it, it was just I need to see people inside of his circle actually give some sort of sign that this is true, because some things you don't want to believe, or just as I touched on earlier with Gaethje and the cardio thing, you don't have any actual evidence or anything to point to and be like, that's why I think that. We don't. However,
exactly.
I don't doubt that John may have heard something like that. Do I maybe doubt? Yeah, there you go. Do I maybe doubt that come Saturday we'll see Dominic Cruz all of a sudden look like a completely different fighter? A little bit. I kind of doubt it. And hey,
I'm sure that he's added wrinkles and all that. He always is trying to improve and everything. I will tell you that I hope that he does not throw any spinning back fist, because if you remember the Cody Garbrandt fight, which I've watched multiple times just to figure out what went wrong.
Yeah, why do you do that to yourself, bro? Are you okay?
It's hard. It's very hard. He threw those. It was an emotional performance. All right, it was an emotional performance. It would be a lot different if he wasn't so aggressive. I stand by that. But
you need to talk to someone, dog.
I do. I need to talk to Brandon, who has been questioning. I see he left his comment there. He's been questioning me lately.
I'm dead.
As for this fight, Henry, he's gonna have to. I think if he tries encounters when Dom tries to come in and land any of his shots, Dominic, he likes to do that too normally, but he's always putting something in your face, right? Whether it's his jab, he's always moving around, hitting the angles. He's making you think about something, right? So it's all going to come down to how Henry reacts to Dominic. Because if Dominic does what he does, he's going to roll to a victory easily. But if he adds some more stuff in there, we could shorten it up. Who knows? You never know. This is MMA. But if he comes in like the Dominic of old and, performs how we know he can perform, it's going to be a classic performance, man. I mean, not just Henry should try and take him down, I think, but that'll make things interesting. Of course, he should always try to take down anybody, right? I think he has a gold medal, I think.
I don't believe you.
I don't believe
you.
I think we tweeted at him last week.
You're lying.
Respond.
Well, everything you've said right now are all lies. He doesn't have a gold medal. He's never won a gold medal, and he's never said anything to anyone or told anybody that he's won a gold or that he won a gold medal.
Yeah, I made that.
And I don't believe it, even if I've seen it and heard it and know it's true. Freaking Triple C. If the bending of said knees were to continue going forward in the bantamweight division, you kind of, if you're going to take this analytical approach from obviously inside your cozy corner in the Dominic Cruz, and yes, as the prompt is said at the bottom of the screen, feel free to go ahead, chime in the comments below. Does Drake Riggs have a problem surrounding his love for Dominic Cruz? Make sure you be gentle.
Need an intervention.
I think, as we've said, we've been talking about this fight for multiple weeks, and also said ad nauseum, much happier, regardless of where my fandom would lie in any particular fighter, much like yours does with Dom. Much rather see this fight than Cejudo and Aldo. Not because I dislike Cejudo and Aldo. Parameters surrounding the fight being made weren't ideal, and neither are these. Let's be honest. Neither are any parameters around any fight being booked right now amidst a global pandemic with no spectators inside the arena. However, Cejudo and Cruz is a fight that and I felt like the mood on Twitter when it was announced was like, oh boy, this one's got layers, because it does. And there are multiple paths of little to lesser than normal resistance for both guys. And I think Cejudo's got to take a page right out of that Mariah's fight playbook. He's got to chop the legs. He's got to try to do whatever he can to stay away whenever Dominic does decide to kind of use his movement to come in where he is at his best. Henry, whether or not he's going to have, I highly doubt he's going to have a volume takedown approach. I think you and I both agreed on that. Cejudo, I don't think he's going to have very much success taking down Dominic, because this isn't, the quote unquote Olympics or so-and-so he says, since he claims he won a gold medal. This isn't the Olympics. This is MMA. And Dominic Cruz, let's see. I think you got the stat right here. What's his takedown defense? 83%. I would go with that as being not bad at all.
Even that seems a little bit low off memory. He doesn't get taken down often.
But this dude has been, fighting under a Zuffa banner since Noah put two animals on the ark.
True.
WEC legend.
Yeah.
But I mean, the key for me in terms of Henry is there are a lot of pages you could take out of that Marlon Moraes fight playbook and use to effective success here. Two different matchups when you look at Cruz and Moraes and compare them and contrast them side by side. But I think a lot of the things that Cejudo did in the rounds 2 and 3 in order to be successful in that fight are things that he can do to potentially be successful here. Oh man, 135 is fun. 135 is fun. Are you having fun with 135?
Always, man.
I'm always
135
having
is
fun.
the best. But the thing about, I want to say something about that though. The Moraes fight, the comparison there of how he had the success in round 2 and 3. Dominic's not going to slow down the same way. And Cejudo is going to have to get a hold of him if he wants to get in that clinch and stuff. Because a lot of Cejudo's best work was done in that clinch, man, against Moraes. Not easy to get a hold of Dominic. How often do we see him in clinch exchanges with anybody in any of his fights? It's not usually a route that he likes to go, likes to take. So it's going to be really interesting, man, especially with the reach and length advantages in Dominic's favor. That's going to be a tough task for Henry. He's going to want to try and get in with those, rare takedown attempts that we might see here and there. And, you mentioned the leg kicks as well. People don't realize how good of, a reaction time and timing that Dominic has when he comes to leg kicks. That's why people don't try that much, because he's caught them when they do, and he'll take you down. He did against Scott Jorgensen. He did against TJ. I mean, it's something he does a lot. He's just got great timing in general. Some of the best time takedowns, that you'll ever find, and that's just unrelated to the leg kicks. And this is, of course, assuming that, he still has that ability to, be as quick-minded and react the same, which we'll see. I mean, his recent injuries, they have not been to his lower body, so it's so interesting, dude. I mean, the little elements outside of it, like stylistically as a fight, kind of just add up to it as, just a great matchup overall.
It is a very juicy and tantalizing matchup, let alone throwing in an undisputed world title on top of all of it. But once again, I will highlight the same thing, because we've been doing this for almost an hour and we still have, a handful of things still left to talk about. So we're going to get rolling. However, I must highlight this again. Dominic Cruz has the potential to become the first, and I'll go ahead and bet the house on him being the only for the rest of the time, fighter in the history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship or any major MMA organization to not only be a 3-time champion in his weight class, but 2 of those 3 occasions coming by way of an immediate return off a 3-year layoff. I mean, you couldn't write that in a book.
Yeah.
My pick, however,
fiction.
My pick, however, though, hope my good friend Drake has tissues nearby, because I know how much hearing this will affect him. I do think Henry Cejudo gets it done by decision.
By decision, huh?
Wait.
That's interesting.
Wait, go ahead one more time. One more time.
Me. No, decision. I find that.
Yeah, I think it goes 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, definitely very possible. I mean, yeah, that's the safe choice, I think, especially for those picking Cruz, and I kind of have to. I feel like I can see it. I can see it both ways. I don't at all want to sound like I'm underestimating Henry, because I've been one of, the biggest, an irrational thinker. Let's put it that way in regards to Henry, because the hate for him blinds his, skill level a lot for people, I think. And he's just one of the best easily. I mean, the guy's a 2-way champion. First of all, people forget that he has 2 belts in 2 different weight classes. That's not something everybody can do or has done. And I mean the people that he's beat as well. So, man, it's a great fight. I won't be surprised no matter
Swear
who
to God,
wins it.
last thing I'll say until we got to move on is I was actually holding out hope that Henry would try at least go forward with being, or at least attempting to be, the first guy to go back up and down, back and forth. I'm sorry. We all know how much of a badass Amanda Nunes is. 135 and 145 don't count. Defending at 135 and then going back up, fighting Felicia Spencer, waiting on Megan Anderson to win, and then fighting Megan Anderson, I don't think that counts. I don't think, in comparison to, let's say, Cejudo, let's say he beats Cruz, goes down to 125, like beats Figueiredo, comes back up to 135, beats like Sterling or Jan. Bro, not even in the same zip code.
I get what you're saying, but the reason I disagree with that is because Felicia and Megan both real featherweights. If she was fighting, let's say, Aldana's going to get a 145 title shot. You're like, okay, that doesn't make sense. She's a bantamweight. If they did something like that, you'd be like, that's
But that
stupid.
would be something they would do, man.
Yeah,
that
but
would be something they would do.
but it would be dumb.
But when has doing something dumb ever stopped these guys?
I'm just saying.
Obviously, 99% of decisions and things that have gone forth within the platform and sport we know and love have worked out beautifully. And the evidence is right in front of our faces. Regardless, though, how many times have you seen the UFC or Bellator or any MMA organization make a move and your immediate first reaction is,
huh. Oh.
What? But I digress. Moving on. And my first question to you is kind of a hypothetical fear that I have. And I'll just go ahead and come out and ask it, even though I don't want to speak it into existence. The level of probability that this fight, on account of these two guys potentially respecting each other's power, Ngannou, obviously, the boxing, the hands, the speed, and the otherworldly power is all there. Rosenstruik, more of a technically savvy type of dude, kickboxing background. You saw him kind of wait to pick his shot for the entirety of the 25 minutes against Alistair. The level of probability, 0 and 100% for you, Mr. Drake Riggs, that we see Ngannou versus Derek Lewis Part 2 take place by virtue of these two gentlemen on Saturday night. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. All I'm saying is the ingredients are certainly in the pot. No doubt about it. These are two of the scariest human beings that put on 4-ounce gloves on the planet.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Interesting betting line there. I haven't seen that yet. Favoring
all
Francis
betting
pretty
lines,
widely.
All betting lines according to betonline.ag. Yeah,
I will say
plus 220.
Yeah, I will say, a solid 35.
Dude, the chance is there, bro. Like, I totally would not be stunned, would be very disappointed, but would 100% not be stunned if the final horn after 3 rounds had sounded between these two guys and like a smooth 22 combined significant strikes landed, just because and out of how much respect and caution these two could potentially take. I could be 100% wrong, and one of these guys could be flatlined in 30 seconds. Like, all I'm saying is the Ngannou Lewis factor is there.
I think that the biggest reason, or the thing that makes it most likely that we won't see that, is Jairzinho's mindset, because this guy is incredibly motivated to kind of keep making history, for Suriname. Because, first Surinamese fighter, he's doing great things right now. He's on a roll, red hot. This guy does not seem afraid of Ngannou. Didn't he call him out? And this is kind of how things got made a little bit. So unless he, gets cold feet last second, which would suck. It would
forgot he called them out.
So, just his mindset alone makes me think he's not going to be very afraid, which could result in him getting, his head knocked off, or vice versa, though. Just, can you imagine, though, if he just fearlessly went at Francis and just took him out like just nothing? Very possible.
Like a boss. Like, you remember that scene in The Dark Knight where Christian Bale is not dressed up as Batman, but he walks by like all the press that are like there, and all he does is go like this, and all the people's phones stop working. They all like they all shut down.
Yeah.
That is just as boss as what the level of boss it would be for Rosenstruik to be like, all right, yep, I'm not treating you any different than how I treated Alan Kraut, and does the same selly that he did, like just what.
Yeah, that would be something.
I would be stunned, and he would potentially be my new favorite human. Screw favorite fighter, favorite human. That'd be unbelievable.
Takes the award right then and there, in front of nobody.
Do you think? I think Rosenstruik potentially could find a way to use his leg kicks to his effect in this fight in particular. A guy that, as I touched on earlier, a kickboxing background, and a guy that, has struck for God knows how long with his hands and his feet. We all know Ngannou for what he's presented us, the pistols firing when he loads up and cocks. But
shotguns.
Rosenstruik is a little more diverse within his technical acumen. He diversifies his kicks really well. He goes to the body, back to the legs all the time and mixes things up really, really well. How much that's going to play in the mind of Ngannou, who I think we've seen now on multiple occasions, minus the one random blip where I guess he was going to give Anthony Hamilton a pretzel arm Kimura type of thing. Other than that, it's been all hands, guns blazing, fire away, let's go.
In hindsight, that might be his most incredible victory, if you think about it.
Anthony Hamilton?
Yeah, that Kimura, standing Kimura.
I mean, the way he did it.
Not resume, obviously,
right.
Not name-wise, but performance.
The way he did it was tremendously impressive. And watching that fight, I just remember like being like, did he learn this like last week?
Yeah.
Like, did he just learn this literally earlier today? He was picking up everything so fast. And this matchup puzzles me, man. Like, for reasons that go beyond like the obvious nature of, two huge guys that can punch hard. Wow. Rosenstruik's ceiling, and like I said, we'll move on kind of rather swiftly here and touch on the main points of the fights going on the card. Your thoughts on where Rosenstruik could go, say he does pull that boss type of move like we mentioned, and KOs Francis, let's say even early, and announces his arrival, kind of the same way Ngannou did in Detroit. I was in there. I was in the building when he basically decapitated Alistair. If Jairzinho finishes Francis bright and early in the first round, your prediction for where he goes next would be what?
I mean, it has to be a title fight, right? Because Ngannou's already there. He should arguably be getting it next, but we're going to run back the Stipe DC trilogy, which, that's fine too. That is just fine. But, these guys are the clear top contenders. Either way, though, I feel like Jairzinho versus, I guess it would, you imagine it would be Stipe no matter what? Because if Stipe loses, do they throw him right back in there and fight for the vacant title? Because DC wins, he vacates it, right? Which makes things a lot more interesting. So let's just put DC out of the question, right? He's not even a potential thought for.
It is so difficult to picture and visualize Daniel Cormier holding a championship belt, let alone a UFC championship belt, being like, this, even though like retirement, it's been something I've talked about, even though getting back to my family and the things important around me, obviously something I want to do. This world championship belt, I don't need it.
Nah.
I'll just go ahead and put it down. Just like something about that.
It seems wrong.
It doesn't seem right.
But
even though, as I said, it's very understandable.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's imagine okay, let's assume it's Stipe no matter what, right? Let's say that they give him the title shot for the vacant title again after losing just because it's Stipe. Why not? It's Stipe.
Right.
And, there's nobody else to give it to. So then Stipe versus Jairzinho, hypothetically, I can't see it going too much different from Francis and Stipe the first time around, just because the wrestling.
Has Jairzinho seen a takedown in the UFC yet?
Alistair took him down.
That's right.
Multiple times, yeah.
That's right.
Easily.
Says your takedown defense 75%.
All that is from Alistair. All of the rest of it is from Alistair.
Right.
And I imagine that Ngannou's is the same with Stipe. So yeah, I mean, he'll be, title contention, title shot worthy, unquestionably, no matter how he wins, unless it is a, unfathomable repeat of the Derek Lewis fight. But we're not even going to think about that.
Yeah,
that's not where it's
the fact that you just said that.
I didn't mean it.
Irked me. I got like shivers as I completely knocked down my microphone.
Either way, though, I have trouble seeing Jairzinho become champion until he shows some better takedown defense. Because let's say he does take on Stipe and then he wins, has some trouble with takedowns, but he finds the knockout.
Right.
And he's got Curtis Blades coming firm, okay? Curtis
Hey,
Blades
Chris
gonna
D'Elia.
he's gonna
Hey, Curtis Blades coming.
put you on your back, and you're gonna hurt. Your face gonna hurt after that.
Curtis Blades looks at dudes and are like, "You call those elbows?"
Oh, these are sledgehammers with razor blades on them.
Pun. The nickname and the last name, and using it in a sentence all at once.
Yeah.
Mr. Drake Briggs, man of many talents.
What
Mr. Davidson Baker, man of many talents as far as shifting the on-screen images and graphics. Because what I see when I see both of these men, especially this guy right here, are bad things for whoever is standing across from him. Recently, though, Jeremy Stephens could really use a win. This is one of my favorite guys to watch in the entire sport, and you could really make a case for both guys being two of the more exciting or upper echelon as far as excitement goes fighters, let alone at featherweight, but in any division. For me, either this or Luque and Price are fight of the night front runners, in my opinion.
Sleeper
outside
picks?
of that, I don't know what else to really go after here other than saying Jeremy needs a win bad, man. Jeremy needs a win bad. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's totally obvious. He hasn't won in 4 fights. Technically not a 3-fight losing streak because of the first Yair fight wasn't even really, can't even call that a fight. But either way, yes, has not won in a while and has not looked good in the losses necessarily. Had some bright spots, of course, but not the best performances. If Jeremy Stephens loses, will he be cut? I don't think so. This is Jeremy Stephens we're talking about.
Having that conversation earlier.
He does have the record, I believe, for most UFC losses, but it's Jeremy Stephens.
He will move in at the time of this fight, getting clapped in on Saturday night. He will move into sole possession of third place on the all-time fight list behind the guy that will eventually break it or will have broken it again just a mere hour or so beforehand in Cerrone. I believe this will be Jeremy Stephens' 33rd UFC start. Jim Miller and Cowboy, I believe, as it sits at this very moment, are at 34. Cowboy will be at 35 after Saturday. So Jeremy Stephens will move into third all-time in terms of total fights in the UFC. However, you scratch the surface of his recent kind of success or lack thereof, and whether or not you really want to count or I really want to count the first time that he and Yair decided to go and get in take a little concession stand shower down in Mexico City with all of the things flying on top of them. You look at Tapology, you look at Sherdog, you look at any public record of Jeremy Stephens, he loses on Saturday. All it's going to say is he's gone out his last 5 fights and hadn't come back with anything to show for it. And obviously that is alarming, and obviously that's something in and of itself that you would have to believe is going to light a fire under Jeremy Stephens. But man, they keep feeding that man Lil Heathen some absolute killers, dude.
Yeah.
The beat, Yair. I mean, come on.
No, he's kind of like the I don't want to say the Weidman of featherweight at the moment, just because he's not being finished brutally. But I mean, similar outcomes, right? He's just getting monsters each and every time out, which, I'm sure that's what he wants and what Weidman wants as well. Because why wouldn't you want to fight those guys that can put you back into the spot? What are you shaking your head at that comparison?
Because I'm hearing Weidman in my head say, "Come on, man, you didn't have to go there. You're not even talking about me."
Yeah,
that's 40 pounds below my weight class. 60 pounds below where I last fought. Come on, man.
But Calvin Kattar, man, he's on the rise, and I have trouble seeing him lose this one unless he gets caught.
The Boston finisher.
He's in that future wave of the next generation of sorts. Just some of the best boxing period, in MMA, you could say. I've seen a lot of people make that claim. Doesn't
hurt to train with Rob Font either. That guy's got, decent hands, I guess. Some decent boxing skills, I guess.
You're okay. You're all right.
I'd low-key pay to see those two spar.
Yeah. And I mean, Jeremy, I don't think has he ever been knocked out yet? He's been knocked out once.
Knocked out, not like knocked out, or like finished by way of KO or TKO.
Oh, well, I guess, Aldo TKO'd him with the body shot.
But that's not like knocked out though.
Like headshots, knockout.
Stevens was trying to, do the barrel roll and kind of move around. But dude, I mean, you could hear that body shot from Antarctica.
No, yeah.
I remember hearing that, and you just knew instantly before Jeremy even moved the muscle, just based off the sound. You were like, he's going down timber. There he goes.
Ooh, shut off.
So, Jeremy Stevens has...
Somebody knocked him out early.
He's lost twice by either KO or TKO.
So
and according
Aldo
to this, according right here...
It was Eve Edwards, I think.
You are ding correct. UFC on Fox 5. I believe that was a main event, right? Or no, they were supposed to be the main event on that one random card in Iowa until Jeremy randomly got arrested.
Right. As you do. As you do.
If you're Jeremy Stevens.
But yeah, either way, he's had a lot of fights. He's been through a lot of wars. Does his chin finally crack now? I don't know. Can Calvin Kattar be the one to do it? Absolutely. Whether that's by a clean knockout or, a TKO.
Oh, totally, man.
I can't go against Kattar. Can't go against him here.
We are getting ready to approach the southern tip of an hour and 20 minutes. So with that being said, we're going to try to just kind of... Because I don't think we've had a podcast longer than like 50 or so minutes. There's one, I guess, if you want to round out the main card. This fight, I kind of wanted to touch on a couple things with, because there are a couple of things that I wanted to, speak into existence here. First of all, we move on to what is the curtain jerker of sorts in what, according to some is the second greatest card of all time, dude. While I wouldn't give it that much credit, I obviously believe this is a phenomenal card. There are also a lot of people that believe this fight belongs as the very first one of the night. There are people like myself and probably you and others that understand how this game works. Understanding how this game works. People are going to tune in, whether it is, people that are devoted, even people that are devoted Carolina Panther and devoted Dallas Cowboy fans. I'll even go that route before I go the obvious route, which is all the people that want to tune in and watch them get knocked out, because that's what everyone's thinking. But you have so many avenues of potential eyeballs that could arise on a story like Greg Hardy's, whether you like him, dislike him, can't stand him, whatever the case may be. If you put a guy that was an all-pro level talent in the most popular sport in America, move him into the UFC, really against whatever he wanted to do at the time, because the NFL kind of basically kicked him out. All of a sudden, one thing leads to another, one thing leads to another, one thing leads to another, despite how you contextualize him or categorize him. People are going to want to see this guy lose. And that's exactly why he has been as high as he has been on all his cards. Do I still think there's a justification to him being the co-main event of the very first card ever on a Disney platform? I think that was a very bad idea, and it blew up in their face. Do I think that they said, oh, wait, pump the brakes, and then went 30 notches down the totem pole to find Dmitry Smolyakov? I do think they did that as well. Here's where the UFC gets credit here, though. I think this is brilliant matchmaking. I think this is a perfect fight for Greg Hardy. I think it's a perfect fight for Yorgan De Castro. I think this is a fight, if these two dudes' paths, as far as the heavyweight landscape is concerned, is crossing, I think they're meeting right at about the right time. And someone's getting knocked out, right? Right?
You would think so. Yeah.
You would.
Yes. The only thing
last time I said that, I went bald, though.
That is true. Maybe you shouldn't say that. It's coming back, buddy.
Oh, dude, it's there.
It's there. Yeah. The only way No, I see it ain't going to knock out. I was going to say, maybe Hardy plays it a little bit more reserved because we did see that in his last two fights because it was Volkov and then Sasoli, where in the Sasoli fight was in Haler Gate and a decision, right? If I'm remembering correctly. that was that before he got pieced up by Ivan Drago.
Yeah, but I mean,
that one's just what it is.
He took that fight on short notice and went to Alexander Volkov's hometown.
I'm just saying if he
I know.
It tries to fight like a smarter fighter who's less reckless, look for the knockout, as we saw more so in that Sasoli fight where he did get the win and, looked, pretty all right, improving and whatnot. If he fights that way, he has a much better chance of getting knocked out, I think, because Jorgen's going to come at him, I think, no matter what. Just look for the knockout. And if he doesn't get it, then he's going to gas and Hardy's going to finish him later. But if Hardy goes balls to the wall and meets with him, then his chances of knocking him out earlier go up great. I mean, this is a heavyweight fight. I don't got to say anything. These are heavyweights that aren't ranked. That's all I got to say.
No one has ever
Expect the knockout, a sloppy knockout, okay?
No one has literally ever said in the history of being a fan of this sport, oh, look, unranked heavyweights on the main card. They don't do that all that often. Look at all these other fights where people are ranked.
Well, look at that Cowboy Cerrone and Pettis, too.
And Pettis.
Wow.
Yeah. But, I mean, the last thing I want to touch on that I feel is important here, and it'll lead me into my prediction and or pick, whatever word you fancy. Jorgen De Castro is a guy who I followed incredibly closely for a few reasons. Number one, every summer – people even within our conglomerate here at Loudmouth MMA and I myself, Keith Schillen, one in particular, does a phenomenal job with his Contender Series previews. And I am known to go so balls to the wall so hard with the Contender Series as well. When you watched Jorgen De Castro's film going into his fight with Alton Meeks last summer, the only cohesive and practical conclusion, Keith would say this as well because I remember seeing him say it, that you could possibly come to is Alton Meeks might not be in there for 60 seconds. This guy is not ready. This guy is not – nothing jumps off the page. Nothing about his time in the CES when you watched his film, while, granted, very little of it, nothing that I saw told me this guy could come in on the Contender Series and beat a guy like Alton Meeks, like an all-world wrestler, and a guy that had been just finishing everybody on the regional scene in the tune of under a minute or less. So what does Jorgen De Castro do? He walks out of the UFC Apex that night with not only a UFC contract in hand, not only his hand getting raised in victory, he becomes, by 30 miles, the biggest upset in the short-lived history of the Contender Series, and it's not even close. Then what does he do after that? He continues to perfect his craft, and I saw confidence really begin to come out of him as a striker, let alone as a fighter. And hey, guess where he could put that on display? Oh, in a stadium in front of like 70,000 people where he put Justin Taffa to sleep. And guess what? That win aged pretty well all of a sudden too. I'm going with Jorgen De Castro in this fight. I do not think that people should look at others that are picking Jorgen De Castro and think they're crazy because, as I alluded to earlier, I think this is as well of a match-made fight for Greg Hardy since he has come into the UFC that there has been. And yes, Hardy will have the speed advantage. Hardy will have the athleticism advantage. Hardy probably has the power advantage, but I don't think it's a debate at all. Jorgen De Castro's level of improvement from entry upon the UFC to now supersedes, in my opinion, from what I've seen, not knowing what we're going to see on Saturday, the improvement overall that Hardy's made since coming into the octagon. And I don't think there's any question. And I think De Castro is going to be even better this time around. Your gut feeling tells you who wins this fight.
Completely agree with you. I have De Castro as well. First round knockout.
Yay for smart people thing. All right. Now we're going to go probably rapid fire through the rest because we've been at this
Yeah.
for almost an hour and a half. And, hey, there are the prelims. Wow, this is a prelim. Can you believe it?
Can you believe it?
The basic and obvious thing that surrounds this fight is both of these boys need a win. My man Drake, who's going to get it?
I got Cowboy, man. I think he's going to get redemption on Showtime. Man, I really am not sure how. I just have a feeling it's going to be a better fight than the first one because obviously the first fight didn't last too long. It was really not much of a fight at all. Just got hit with that. Cowboy got hit with that body kick. But I don't know, man. I just have a feeling that he knows he really kind of needs this one. I mean, Pettis, he needs it too, but I feel like Pettis has declined more than Cerrone, especially when you look at who they've been fighting. Like Cerrone's fought, he's lost to what? It's Ferguson, Gaethje, and Conor in a row. Okay, this doesn't mean that he is completely done yet, and we saw what he did before that to other top guys. He just went against tippy top guys,
Oh, and you could literally jump even to another chronological sector of Cowboy's career, and you could be like, hey, want these three names? This guy, all in a row, twice on short notice, twice halfway across the world, twice really bad matchups for him. What screams out to me immediately, Till in Poland, Leon Edwards in Singapore. I mean, a guy's got to get credit for that. And obviously, I do. Yeah. I see so much Donald Cerrone disrespect on social media. It makes me want to puke.
So, yeah, I don't know. I just think there's a lot left. There's more left in the tank for Cerrone here. I mean, I don't know. Pettis, he's been I don't know how to describe it, kind of a false. There's been glimmers of false hope, I think, with him, like that he's coming back. There's obviously the Wonder Boy knockout.
I was about to say.
You forget he was losing that fight. He was losing that whole fight.
Every second.
Every single second of that fight.
Every second. I was getting ready to go into autopilot mode as an observer. After 3 rounds of a fight. Yeah. After 3 rounds of a fight that's going one way and you don't see it changing, you get ready to be like, all right, it's probably cool to text people and not really watch all that carefully. And oh my God, Wonder Boy is convulsing on the canvas.
Deceased.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. And outside of that, I mean, take that away. Take that away. And all of a sudden, mark up on Pettis' track record that's a loss. We're talking loss to Ferguson, loss to Wonder Boy, loss to Nate, loss to Diego Ferreira. And the fight before Ferguson, that was a stellar performance, though, against Michael Chiesa, though. He looked like he got shot out of a cannon against Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, that one was interesting. But that was also, I feel like, more of maybe just a bad night for Chiesa. I'm going to go there.
Week.
I'm going to go
there.
Bad
week for Chiesa. You could also make the case that Chiesa literally walked into that octagon saying, what's even the point? I'm not fighting at this weight ever again. First of all, should have her in first place.
It's no good.
But once again, D-Rake and D-Bake are in agreement. Cowboy Cerrone is my pick. So very simple and very to the point here. Can we just go ahead and start this fight on the ground? And if they somehow make their way back up to the feet, whatever.
But and promote this one.
Ref, it's okay. Just go ahead, set these two guys in a position where it's grappling friendly. And all of a sudden we have a glorified grappling matchup that, they're standing up now, could turn into a glorified kickboxing matchup. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is Fabricio Verdum, the absolute worst possible matchup on the entire face of this earth for Alexei Oleinik, yes or no? I think if there is a worse matchup for Alexei Oleinik, you got to show him to me. I think it's that guy right there, Vaikavala. This guy right here, pixelated, that I'm now dragging. Oh, you can't see that actually. But
yes, it's a rough one.
I don't think there's a worse matchup for
Blades wasn't a good one.
No, but that fight, You know how when like fights are made and like you're like, oh, okay, these two guys are ranked. Oh, okay, these two guys are on win streaks. Why does my brain have an alarm going off like telling me this fight's not going to be that great? You know what I'm saying? Just stylistically, I think Verdum takes care of him quickly here, man. Like I said, the path to victory for Alexei. What are you going to do? Submit Verdum? Really?
Can you imagine if he Ezekiel? This should be the bet, dude. If he can pull off an Ezekiel on Verdum, we have to do something. I'm not shaving my hair, but this needs to be a bet here for
everybody on my podcast network. Is full of bastards. They don't step up to the plate whenever it's time. One of these days, though, they will.
One of these days, I already.
Someone else will be bald.
Something.
In and of itself, though, if Alexei Oleinik submitted Fabricio Verdum, I think for the rest of time, or for the remainder of Alexei Oleinik's career, which 58-13-1, 72 fights in his professional. So let's just go ahead and ballpark. He's probably going to fight 29 more times.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you, if he submits Fabricio Verdum, every single time Alexei Oleinik fights for the rest of his career, I will have to sit there in an observed moment of silence the whole time. Like I would treat it as a moment of silence. I'm doing it out of respect. I mean, what up?
No, you're right.
Ezekiel, two dudes from the bottom and submit Fabricio Verdum? I don't care if you never sniffed the title.
Yeah. You're the true champ in my heart.
Yep, and good thing we can dream about that later because we ain't going to see it on Saturday night. Verdum's going to win that fight. I like the upset here, too. I like Michelle Waterson here. Carla Esparza's put things together quite well in her past couple fights. Carla is, I think, at minus 145.
Okay.
Right now, the odds are Carla Esparza is now down to minus 120. Michelle Waterson an even plus 100. The difference for me in this fight, why I give the edge to Michelle, is obviously we know Carla Esparza is by no means necessarily a specialist. However, we know where her strengths lie. Her strengths lie within a wrestle-heavy, clinch-heavy, grinded-out type of approach that has worked at least in some capacities to everyone she's fought whose name is not 38 syllables from a Polish family. You know what I'm saying? Joanna walked in there and was like, this ain't going to work on me. Outside of that, Carla's had a reasonable amount of success against just about everyone, probably leaving somebody out off the top of my head. But she's also won a lot of fights going into that I didn't expect her to win. I did not expect her to beat Yanderova. I did not expect her to beat Gedalia. She did beat Gedalia. That was one of those fights where like the decision was like controversial, right?
Yeah, that was a close one.
I remember it being super competitive, and nonetheless,
did Claudia win that one? I don't even remember. It was so close.
I remember I gotta look it up now. I remember being like, "That's the most." No matter what type of scorecard is read, and no matter who wins, it's okay because the fight was super close fight ever.
Claudia won.
The winner of I was about to. Okay, so Claudia did win that fight. Yeah. But even now, Alexa Grasso. That's another name, another solid name to have in your winning streak. Can you believe too that this would be Carla Esparza's first 3-fight win streak in the UFC if she were to win this fight?
That would be very wild. That would be very wild indeed. But yeah, man, I agree with you too for the most part. I mean, this for me, I see it playing out as we're gonna see. I think no matter what, Carla's getting the takedown here, and she's gonna do what she does best, which is control her opponent from the top, usually guard. She doesn't care to transition too much, it seems, but she's very good on top and controls her opponents well. So I think she's either going to do that to a decision, kind of beat up Michelle for the most part, or she's going to do that but get caught at some point by a submission. It makes me a little sad, though, because this could very well be a atomweight title fight. Or an atomweight fight, introduction fight for, if the UFC was to add that division, which they should add that division.
I was literally just about to say word for word. Can you imagine if they added a 105-pound division? I don't think the fans would be ready. People don't understand. Like, you think watching straw weights is difficult to kind of follow around with how fast they're going? Yeah, okay, buddy. Watch a couple 105-pounders fight.
Oh, it's so good though.
And then like make sure you put it on slow motion. I was saying all that about Carlin. My pick here is Michelle. And the reason why my pick is Michelle is because Michelle has that aspect as a fighter. I wouldn't say it's rare. You got to be good at everything, or at least serviceable at everything when you get to this level. But I don't think Michelle Watterson really lacks in any particular area. I think she's solid kind of all the way around. And while she's better at some things than others, I think all around she will use that acumen to help get her hand raised and surely secure a rematch against someone she's already fought in the top 5, more than likely.
Yeah.
Uriah Hall very quietly won his last 2 fights. Boy, could he all of a sudden be coming if he makes it 3 against Jacare. Basically, the question here is obviously, is Jacare going to do what he's done multiple times against Gastelum, against a slew of others, Weidman? Is he going to stand there and try to show everybody that he can stand and bang with a guy as dangerous as Uriah Hall, or are we going to see a takedown heavy, try to get you to the ground, choke you out, grab a limb type of approach from the Brazilian?
I say no to the more of the war striking battles approach. I think he will do some vintage Jacare here, because if you look at that Blachowicz fight, his last fight, that's kind of what he did. It wasn't a great fight whatsoever, but he, attempted to get it there. So I think he will again. I mean, you're going against Uriah Hall here. That's the smartest path to victory. Not to say he couldn't knock out Uriah Hall. Very capable. But,
so capable.
But, fight to your strengths here. And I think we'll see it because, he's at the end of his career, trying just to get, stay in the mix as much as he can. Smart thing to do is stick to the jits. I think he will.
Stick to the jits.
So
I can see this fight being a knock him out, drag him out, like who's tougher than the other guy. Oh, all of a sudden you landed this shot. How do you like this? Could also see it happening in a way that almost half of Uriah Hall's wins have come in, and that is Uriah Hall being damn near put out, damn near outclassed, damn near outstruck, outfought for the very beginning onward until all of a sudden, bang, something happens and the entire fight is practically slipping away. I mean, dude, think of how many times it's happened. Jotko, Gegard, Bevon Lewis. He was losing literally all of those fights, and all it took was one shot to either finish. I mean, he finished Bevon Lewis. How Gegard Mousasi was not in a coma after he took that spinning back.
Didn't even go out cold.
I know, and then he took a flying knee after that. But, my pick here is Jacare. It's the safe pick, but oh man, tell you what, middleweights at the top of the division do not want to be hearing anytime soon is look out, here comes Uriah Hall on a 3-fight win streak. Not saying that scares anybody, but
you never know.
You people
never know.
Think twice. Real quick, on these last 3, this is my other kind of, one you need to watch for fight of the night. This is a rematch. These two guys
love it.
Took each other on in Sao Paulo. I did the research and read these stats off of my podcast earlier. Since these two guys fought on the Brunson Machida card, I think in the latter part of 2017, I'm going to try to remember these stats without looking at my notes off the top of my head. 12 fights combined between the two. I know that's right. 9-3 combined record. 8 of those 9 wins between these two combined since they fought in 2017. 8 of those 9 wins between the two coming by way of finish. 5 of those 8 wins taking less than a round to happen. And then obviously, I mean, Nico Price, he's an anomaly in and of himself. This guy can finish guys with his fist while on his back. And then says, oh, you like how I finish people on my back? Hey, James Vick, check this out.
Here's my soul.
Dude, this, though, is a line that shocks me. Luque is minus 270. Price is plus 230.
Wow.
I think that's huge odds for guys as dangerous as this. But I rest my case on this one. If you have a lean one way or the other, go ahead and speak your case, my friend.
Boy. I have to lean towards Luque just because, man, as much as Nico is absolutely never out of it, he's just so kill or be killed that I have an easier time seeing him damage Luque, let's say something like that, and then get put out, right? Like, I think that he'll have success and get close to possibly winning. I could see that where he hurts Luque, but then he's going to get tagged himself, and then he'll be the one getting finished. I see it as one of those kind of crazy sequences going down, kind of similar to the Tim Means fight, even though he did win that one. That's pretty much the closest example I can think of.
God won me so much money, and I was so happy.
So, Luque, he's fought just, it's tougher guys too, but stylistically, you just never know, and this is a good one. Great rematch.
You never know. Fantastic rematch. Really happy that the guys up in Vegas, the Shelbys and the Maynards of the world were like, hey, who gives a damn if these guys fought? Let's do it again. Yeah, I mean, last thing I will say, though, believe it or not, recapped Nico Price and Jeff Neal while not at work, but at my old establishment of employment in Toledo, Ohio, a Buffalo Wild Wings. I was there recapping that fight, just in the midst and amongst the middle of everyone. And then all of a sudden, double knockout. You remember that? When he and Jeff Neal both went down? It was like kind of like because of the headbutt.
Yeah.
They both hit the canvas.
Yeah, that was insane, dude.
That's the type of thing you were saying, though, is like you cannot rule anything out when the guy on the right, this guy,
that one,
is there. However, you want to talk about can't rule out anything? We got this guy.
The nasty.
The man quoted as saying, "You think I'm afraid of losing a limb? I almost cut off my nuts." I got the upset here, man. I think Charles Rosa is being tremendously overlooked, and I also think this matchup is not a particularly ideal one for Bryce Mitchell. What say you?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough one. But, Mitchell, I feel like he has a little bit of that Price type of effect in him where you never know. This guy's, he's going to sneak something. He can always sneak something in there, but, I like... What were you thinking? The loss, the one loss is going to look at.
Show UFC to actually count the loss on Tough on their website and their website only, and literally nowhere else official records are taken. So UFC of the UFC to do that.
Very mumuch so.
Man is so 12-0, and it's not even funny.
Yeah, but no, I like Rosa as the underdog pick. Good one to. Is he the official underdog betting wise too?
Yeah, but those odds are closing. They've kind of gone back up a little bit in Mitchell's favor. Bryce right now is minus 160. Rosa, that's a juicy plus 140.
Mm-hmm.
I really the X factor for me, especially when I didn't go balls to the wall studying film in an attempt to try to pick a winner between these two, but the bits and pieces that I did watch showed me that the X factor, at least for me particularly, is going to be the way Charles Rosa chains his submissions and chains the way he grapples. I mean, kind of like how Bryce does, but I've seen Charles kind of do it in a way that has appeared to be a little bit even more successful. Let's not forget, before Manny Bermudez tapped to him, we were looking at Manny Bermudez like, dude, this dude is coming in here, tapping guys that are undefeated, getting guys out of there quicker than they ever have been, finished everybody he's fought. Obviously, that's a far cry from where we are now. But this man, Charles Rosa, came in and put a quick stop to that. I think Charles Rosa is being overlooked. I really do.
Yeah, man, great points. Yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it, but I still got to go with Bryce here. I just have a feeling he's got just so much momentum going on right now. But Not to say it can't be halted. That's a very good one, definitely. But yeah, I got Mitchell. And then as for this one, just to get it right out of the way, Span knockout.
This is the only fight.
lock
This
of
is
the
the
night.
only fight that doesn't belong on this card, in my opinion. Like,
how dare you? That main event opener.
like Mitchell, like obviously Bryce Mitchell has like had like a surge of popularity. Luque and Price, I feel like most fans of the sport know who those guys are now. And then all the way up from then on out either includes one ranked fighter or ranked fighters fighting each other. This is clearly, obviously, 100%, you're not fooling anybody, UFC, a showcase fight. And I respect the hell out of Sam Alvey, and I, as understandably and obviously so. But, you know, he's got to be thinking his lucky stars Mark Goddard is stuck in England and not going to be there, like you said. Or else he might as well not even walk out to the cage. Goddard will be waving it off before he even taps him in. Regardless, though, glad to see we get a little Fortis MMA flavor in here because, you know, the card's not the same without a Fortis MMA up-and-coming guy because it seems like every card has one. And the 205-pound crop of talent certainly has their guy in Ryan Spann. I agree with you. This is a showcase fight, in my opinion. Wouldn't terribly shock me if Sam Alvey, you know, does his thing where he's backing up against the fence, counter-striking, kind of apropos to how he normally does, and then bang, all of a sudden fight's over. Wouldn't be surprised. Terribly surprised. But, yeah, all the chips are in on Ryan Spann for me, and he's the biggest favorite on the card, minus 425 right now. So,
yep, that's what that is.
I wonder what Blaine's going to say when he sees that we went damn near an hour and 50 minutes. Once again, we'd like to remind you, this is episode 6 of Open Mat, one of what is dozens amongst even more that are incoming shows that are a part of this great podcast network, the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, which is, you know, believe it or not, at Loudmouth MMA. I know, shocking. But regardless, you can find all sorts of different shows that tickle your fancy, you know, get exactly what you need as far as your podcast consumption is concerned in the MMA world. I guarantee you we have it all here underneath one umbrella. And my man Drake and my man Blaine, who we did sorely miss tonight, will certainly be back next Thursday, hopefully live on YouTube as well. But we'll be back next Thursday to kind of recap, and we'll have 2 cards to recap, right?
Yeah, we will. Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Things are picking up fast.
I know.
It will be episode 7. But that is then, and this is now. And now is time for goodbye. We'd like to thank everybody that has watched, commented, seen Facebook, seen Come Gone. And we'd like to send our prayers out to our boy and our original host, Blaine Henry, who's going through times within his family at the moment. We know that he'll be back next week ready to talk about the things he loves as well as he does. And we know you're listening, bro. Hope everything is cool. All right. We will see you guys next week. Remember to subscribe to the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network wherever you can get your podcasts. Until next time, Davidson Baker, Drake Riggs, signing off.